Ed, and Eddy is more disturbing than you remember, but not in the ways I've talked about in other videos. It's hysterical, absolutely unhinged, and Ed is my spirit animal. Today, I'm here to talk about why Ed, and Eddy manages to take even the most disturbing and creepy episodes and presents them in such a comedic fashion that makes it easy to laugh off and not think twice. So let's take a look at some of the disturbing episodes of one of the most iconic Cartoon Network shows of the late 90s to early 2000s. Honor Thy Ed opens up with the Ed boys coming up with their latest scam of making paper grass and crayon tacos. That's right. And of course, Ed, who's wearing a cactus on his head, just deep throats the crayon shavings because, hey,
it's orange like cheese.
He then eats a blue crayon, and Double D is fascinated by Ed eating the crayons and decides to give it a try. Obviously, it's disgusting, and Double D grabs Eddy's brother's hot sauce and just downs it. Ed has also doused his plate in grass taco with the hot sauce too, and Eddy doesn't understand why there's no kick. He tastes some himself, and then this happens.
Hi, Eddy!
And of course, Eddy is next. He explodes into a blast of fire, and the boys run to the nearest sprinkler and take that baby for a ride. We hear Jimmy scream in terror off in the distance. He then tells the rest of the kids of the cul-de-sac that he saw a dark figure in the window and its body contorted with a hideous hairdo. And of course, Ed swoops in to protect Jimmy and his baby sister by shoving them under his shirt, which then prompts this.
Wait! This house is owned by the provoked opera singer who lures little boys and girls with enchanted arias!
Can anyone decipher what Rolf says at the end there? Because I can't figure it out. Anyways, Eddy can't stand Jimmy screaming, and I can't blame him. I honestly wanted to throw my speakers out the window every time he screamed, but luckily Eddy shoved a bottle over his head, so we no longer have to hear Jimmy screaming. Now, of course, Eddy is being Mr. Tough Guy as usual, and Kevin calls his bluff and dares him to check out this haunted house. He chickens out, obviously, but Kevin came prepared and whips out a jawbreaker. It's only one, but Eddy doesn't care. He grabs the Ed boys and pushes them through the yard, which causes Ed to sneeze once, and that clears the entire yard of these dandelions. And now as Eddy and Double D are planning to just have him put one single foot inside to get the jawbreaker, Ed sneezes again and sends the boys flying through the door and into the house. Once seeing the rundown and dirty house, Eddy realizes that it's not haunted and scares Double D, who's absolutely terrified. Eddy has an idea and starts banging with Ed and screaming at the top of his lungs, pretending they're being attacked. They even make it look like Ed is being choked in the window, which of course terrifies the kids outside. Until Ed gets a little too into it and steps too far to the side, revealing it's his own hand, which of course causes the kids to go from screaming and terrified to angry with the Ed boys for obvious reasons. Eddy gets bored and decides it's time to collect the jawbreaker and leave, but the doorknob falls off and rolls through a hole in the floor, trapping them inside. Eddy tries to open it from the other side and gets his finger stuck in the door handle piece thing, whatever that thing is, but the point is he is stuck. Ed scares Double D.
Content swab! Release the wax, ear person!
You're scaring me more than usual, Ed!
And in a panic, he has Ed try to free him. Unfortunately, Ed steps on a loose board, which triggers a chest in the other room to activate. Ed says that it's a phantom, and Double D goes into a frenzy in an attempt to free Eddy's finger so they can escape. But this completely backfired. All three of them got sent flying into the basement door, tore it down, and ended up flying into the basement of this creepy and abandoned house. Obviously, the kids of the cul-de-sac hear the screaming, but they think the Ed boys are just milking this situation, so they all leave them inside. Kevin ate the jawbreaker himself, so I hope all of this was worth it, Eddy. Because here is where things start to get a little weird. The boys ride the door down the stairs until they find themselves in a room full of weird mirrors. Double D finds books lying on the floor and follows them up a spiral staircase alone. Next, the dumbwaiter comes down to the basement with an open box of Chunky Puffs, Ed's favorite cereal. He jumps into the dumbwaiter, takes a whole bite out of the box, and the dumbwaiter activates and takes him upstairs. So at this point, Ed and Double D have been lured away with arguably the perfect traps for them specifically, and all three boys are now separated. And like I said, this is where things get a little weird. Eddy starts moving on his own, and we realize the rug he's standing on is being pulled under the steps, to the point that Eddy himself is basically getting eaten by the stairs. We then cut to Double D, who found a sideways book, and of course he's gotta fix it. So he grabs the ladder and fixes the book, but this was all part of the plan. A trap door opens right under the ladder, and as Double D climbs down into it, the trapdoor slams shut. Eddy is still trapped by the stairs, but he hears a pig squeal and sees a piggy bank with a $sign on it waiting for him at the top of the stairs. So he starts climbing up the stairs with his feet still stuck, makes it to the top of the stairs, grabs the piggy bank, and we see it's attached to a lever. When he pulls this lever, it lifts the stairs up, and Eddy goes flying through the house and lands in a barrel. Double D, who has somehow not noticed what happened, is still climbing down the secret ladder until he falls and lands in a green trash can. Also,
Desk, do you know how long I have been waiting?
we hear a strange noise and realize they're attached to a train set, which starts taking them on basically a dark and spooky roller coaster. You just can't help but ask what the heck is going on. But then they come crashing through a giant heart taped to the wall, and it's clear as day. Eddy's barrel has a suit painted on it. He's naked and wearing a top hat. Double D's can has been painted to be a bodybuilder in a Speedo. He's also naked and wearing a different hat. And Ed is also naked and is a sailor, I guess. They continue the roller coaster through this tunnel of love scenario, and we start to see animatronics of the boys, which just makes the situation so much creepier than it already is. The Eddy animatronic is ironing clothes, Double D is washing dishes, and Ed is just being Ed.
Who's that good-looking guy?
Get some glasses, Ed.
They then go down a hill and finally hit a chest, ending the ride, and the lid of the chest pops open. And who else is waiting for them but the Kanker sisters? And we realize the Kanker sisters set up an entire wedding. May and Marie are side by side with Ed and Double D, while May starts going through the wedding pronouncement, and Marie has May grab the rings. They force the makeshift rings onto the Ed boys' fingers, and May reveals that Eddy is already wearing his. That's right, they set this entire thing up from the start. We cut to the Ed boys' mouths attached to some kind of pulley system with Ed at the front, and they're dragging the Kanker sisters through the street, playing wedding bells, and of course the entire cul-de-sac mocks the Ed boys, except for Jimmy, who's just loving every moment of it, even after he's knocked out by the bouquet. It's such a disturbing episode, and it just takes you on an absolute ride. Kids entering into a haunted house is a pretty common trope in cartoons, and yeah, generally something goes awry or you find out that it's really haunted, and in this episode's case, you start to question what's going on. Is it haunted? Until you see that heart. I mean, pretty much every episode with the Kanker sisters is fairly disturbing, and let's be honest, most people who maybe don't find them disturbing probably would if you were to flip the genders of the Eds and the Kanker sisters. A joke wedding is one thing, but trapping someone, abusing them, stripping them naked of all their clothes, and forcing them into this marriage. It's pretty messed up stuff, man. On to the next episode.
I say stars.
Ed Overboard is another creepy and disturbing episode, but not in quite the same way as Honor Thy Ed. This one may somehow be even more creepily disturbing, but with that Ed, Ed, and Eddy flavor. We open with the Canker sisters giving May a makeover to make her too hot to drop, but this happens. So yeah, it's a really messed up joke if you can even call it a joke, but let's be real, it's no worse than anything the Canker sisters have done before, and it's nothing compared to what's to come. That being said, May goes on in absolute frenzy and starts throwing a cart full of random things at her sister in a fit of rage, until she finds her creepy little Ed doll in the cart, which causes her to burst into tears. They mock her over and over and over again, but she manages to smack Marie right in the face with a metal steering wheel. We cut to Ed making macaroni art for Double D's failed scam of an arts and crafts fair. Eddy is frustrated that no one is there and they're making no money for jawbreakers, and Ed glued his head to the table. So it seems like a typical Ed, Ed, and Eddy episode, but then the Canker sisters show up. May is clearly missing from the group, but Marie and Lee kidnap Ed, who just knows that there isn't much he can do.
Okie dokie, ladies. See you guys. A lesson in life I'm sure to get. Yep, I have seen better days.
Double D goes into a panic, unsurprisingly, and Eddy gets so scared, he just pretends he didn't see it happen. He was totally cool with just abandoning Ed. Eddy starts focusing on making arts and crafts to distract himself, but Double D has an idea and thankfully drags Eddy with him. They find Rolf and plead for him to help them save Ed. He then dives into a barrel of tree sap before popping out of a nearby oil barrel, dressed in his Urban Ranger's outfit, and declares that the Urban Rangers will save Ed. He sounds the alarm, and Tommy, Plank, and Jimmy arrive to learn about their new mission. There's no badge for this mission, but they will get
Ring of the full pewter medallion.
Oh, come on.
So of course, as typical Eddy, he starts talking down to the Urban Rangers, but Rolf just knocks him out with the book because he tries to follow along and he hasn't made the Urban Ranger pledge. And after Double D pleads to Rolf to allow them to join him just so that they can help save their friend, he agrees finally, as long as they swear on the Urban Ranger's book.
I swear, but standards won't let me.
That looks like it hurt. The boys make it to the trailer park and we find Ed tied to a tree and pleading to be let go. And Lee just responds by saying,
I love a man that begs.
it's just so messed up, and you can't help but feel horrible for Ed, who's trapped in this disgusting situation. Especially with the fact we know the Canker sisters are not afraid to essay the Ed boys. Marie proceeds to bring May outside to see the clearly distressed Ed they tied up for their sister. May's eyes light up with hearts and she rushes towards Ed as you just hear him shout, "Help me," in pure desperation. Eddy's laughing at his poor friend, confirming that Eddy is just absolutely heartless, but luckily Rolf and the Urban Rangers start plotting. May chooses a red crayon she uses as her quote-unquote weapon. Yeah, they literally refer to it as a weapon. And we also get to see a picture of their daddy on the box, which is pretty freaking weird. I mean, this is what I can only assume is their love box. I mean, we see a drawing of Ed, who's currently tied up and being assaulted, Double D, who's been assaulted in the past, hearts all over, and then Daddy. So I don't know, you be the judge. So May, who clearly has daddy issues, starts drawing a heart on Ed's stomach, stamps his and her name in that heart, and grabs his head to start forcefully kissing his entire face and body, which leaves lipstick kiss marks all over his face and body, while her and her sisters laugh and mock him repeatedly. The Urban Rangers split up, and we see Marie swinging May back and forth to kiss Ed on the lips, repeatedly as he screams for help and cries out in between every kiss, while Lee just stands there and watches. It's just so uncomfortable to watch. Like, this is not something I really ever questioned when I was younger, and maybe that's because growing up in the 90s, SA happening to boys was kind of just ignored or laughed at, unfortunately, but watching it now, this is messed up, dude. So with Ed going through this, Rolf, in a desperate attempt to distract the Kanker sisters, starts shouting about their dirty grill so that Johnny, Plank, and Jimmy can make their way to the bushes near Ed in an attempt to save him. Luckily, Lee and Marie are easily distracted by Rolf's uniform of all things and go steal May away from Ed, who's forcing him to nibble on her ear against his will, as he just looks absolutely horrified. Luckily, as soon as May leaves, Jimmy, Johnny, and Plank start freeing Ed, but he doesn't understand what's going on because he's really dumb, and he just starts shouting out loud, and then in an attempt to help the boys, he just starts shouting out loud even more, and the Rangers get caught. May sprints over to them as quick as she can, beats the ever-loving crap out of both of them, leaving them battered and with black eyes. Of course, right then, the Kanker sisters realize Rolf is also with them because of the uniforms, so in a panic, they all just pretend to be dead. Eddy starts laughing and tries to leave, in just straight up abandoning his friend, but is convinced to stay and help by Double D, thankfully. So while the Kanker sisters are distracted, they sneak by with tools, steal the entire tree, and rescue Ed. Once they have Ed free, they take him to the park, and Double D starts washing his body to clean off the lipstick and writing. Unfortunately, but not surprisingly, it looks like things didn't go too well for the Urban Rangers, who clearly were also SA'd by the Kanker sisters too, it seems. They're dressed in their clothes, have kiss marks all over their face, are clearly angry, in distress, and have underwear on their heads. We don't know exactly what happened to them, but we do know they're upset and drag Ed off to, I don't know, either beat him up or trade him with the Kankers for their freedom. And let's be honest, that sounds like something the Kanker sisters would do. So yeah, these were the two most creepy and disturbing episodes that I could find of the Kanker sisters, but let me know if there's one that stuck with you that I may have missed. And let me know if you'd like to cover the darker episodes of Ed and Eddy, because oh, do I have a list. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, click this video on the screen here to see some other messed up memories from your childhood, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.